Avery, whose show is this? When we're wow, just completely blanked. Live
Good start.
video. And we're live here in the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined on this extra fine, I would say, Thursday afternoon by Trevor Lane of LakersNation. I say it's extra fine, Trevor, because over the course of the day, over the course of the last, I would say couple of weeks, it's looked like it's been heading in this direction. But today it looks like it's damn near as official as you can get before the major news outlets touch on it. Luka looks like he's going to sign his extension with the Lakers. So how, with that in mind, how are you holding up?
I'm doing great. I mean, it's a little bit of an exhale, I think. I don't know if it's so much of a celebration, but more of a sigh of relief that we're hearing more and more that Luka is going to sign that extension. Like, it almost sounds like if he could sign it today, he would sign it today. It's just he can't do it till August 2nd. So that is great news. The most important part, as much as we get into like the DeAndre Ayton and the Marcus Smarts and Jake LaRavias and all these other pieces, and should the Lakers have made this trade or that trade, the most important part of the Lakers summer was getting Luka to sign this extension. So again, it's not done until it's done. Don't count your chickens till they're hatched and all that kind of stuff. But sounding very, very positive about him getting that deal done. And sounds like he's going to probably do it the earliest possible time he can on August 2nd.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to get a little more into the details of that, or the reported details of that. We're going to talk about what we would like to see happen from the Lakers to kind of close out this offseason, if we think the Lakers need to do any further tweaks or work on this roster. And then I also want to talk, Trevor, towards the tail end of the show, about this team's potential identity. There are, I think, a couple directions that they could maybe go in, or at least a couple players whose inclusion in that identity will help kind of tell us about it. So we'll talk about that at the tail end of the show. A quick reminder, please do hit subscribe wherever it is that you guys are watching right now. If you guys are on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge to find the show there. And then if you guys are listening when I post this via podcast, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. And like buttons as well, like and share buttons. That stuff helps. So let's talk about this extension. I actually think it is cause for, I don't want to celebrate too early here because, like you said, it can't officially be signed for another week or so. But the reason I would say it's kind of cause for celebration is if the Lakers are going to move forward on this Project Giannis, Project Jokic plan, it's dead in the water if Luka isn't extending, right? There is no chance that you can convince those guys to come to LA if they don't know that Luka is there waiting for him.
Right.
And to me, between that and also the work that he has done behind the scenes this summer, recruiting DeAndre Ayton, recruiting Marcus Smart, working on everything that he has worked on, not just in terms of roster, but also his body, working on his body the way that it appears he has worked on his body. I would say, at least as it pertains specifically to the Lakers' relationship with Luka and our hopes or expectations with Luka heading into the season, this summer couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, the Lakers fans in general, I put a poll out on X the other day saying, what grade would you give the Lakers offseason? And I think B won the poll. And I think that's more so what the Lakers have or haven't done. That's about the context of the Western Conference, where in general, Lakers fans are looking around going, well, damn, did the Rockets had such a great summer. Denver had such a, the Lakers did good things, but did these other teams do more? Did they do better things? But specifically looking at the Lakers and what they've done, they're checking every box, right? The number one thing on their to-do list was get Luka to sign an extension. Again, it's not done yet, but sounding like that will be done in short order. Great. Okay, we're going to check that one off. You needed a center. They got a center. They got DeAndre Ayton. I mean, we were talking about, could they convince Brooke Lopez? Could they convince Clint Capella to take the taxpayer MLE, that 5.7 million? The answer ended up being no, because both the guys got more than that. But you wind up instead getting DeAndre Ayton, who I would have taken over either one of those guys, and you got him without having to give up any future capital or anything like that. You get a young wing in Jake Laravia that multiple teams were pursuing. Multiple Western Conference teams were giving him contract offers, and the Lakers were able to get him. So, and then of course the addition of Marcus Smart to help you out defensively. I think overall this summer for the Lakers has gone extremely well. With the only thing holding back Lakers fans right now from really being excited about what's happened, it's the other things that have gone on in the Western Conference. But in a vacuum, I think the Lakers have had an awesome summer with a lot of things falling into place for them that they really needed. A few hiccups along the way, but man, what a difference a year made. It's been a much better summer this year than last year, Anthony. That's for sure.
You're gonna make me pour a glass of whiskey thinking about last summer. No, I think, yeah, I think that's an important delineation to make here, right? Is that it can be a perfect summer as it pertains to one specific angle or way of looking at the summer, but there can also be some meat left on the bone when you're talking about the context of everybody else that you're competing with.
Sure.
You know, I think that there is, well, we're going to talk about this here in a second. I think the Lakers need 2 more moves. You know, I think they need a consolidation trade, and then I would like for them to get in on some, one of these unsigned free agents right now. I think Amir Coffey probably tops my list of players I'd be kind of interested in. But, outside of that, we'll get to that here in a second. But like the Luka part of this, so right when he extended, or right when the trade happens, obviously he does that press conference. He's clearly shell-shocked, right? He's kind of slumped over. Remember how like I was just watching, and the body language was like, oh my God, this guy is not thrilled about all of this stuff. And now I think that clearly, knowing what we know now and what we've learned since, I think it was more that he was upset that Dallas traded him than he was upset to be a Laker specifically. And I think that's important to note. But you go from that, and then, the immediate reports are this guy's an incredibly loyal guy. He wanted to be in Dallas his entire career. He's now looking at the Lakers in that same way. And you kind of carry through the rest of the season that way. And then the season ends as poorly as it did. And you're like, ooh, like, Luka, please don't hold that too much against the Lakers, and that they force you to enter a playoff series with Jackson Hayes as your starting center. And then the season ends, and Dorian Finney-Smith is the first domino, right? Is that Dorian is gone, and he leaves on not the best terms. And you're thinking, like, that's his best friend on the team? Like, that's what we're, that's the first, his introduction to a Lakers offseason is his best friend, not just leaving via free agency, but also leaving via free agency with a bad taste in the mouth as well. And I would say that was probably the first and maybe only moment where I was like, oh God, please, like, give me some positive news. Give me some positive reporting. McMahon's been really good at reporting, and Stein also is really plugged into Luka's camp. And I was just like, one of those two guys, please say that Luka isn't too pissed at how all of this is going. And then to finally arrive here, they do sign Ayton, who he shares an agency with. They do bring in Marcus Smart, who he recruited personally. And I don't think he does any recruiting without having a commitment, a long-term commitment in mind to the Lakers. So that was the first time I was like, okay, cool. He's extending. That's pretty good. And then we arrive here today. Tell me about that roller coaster for you. Was it much of a roller coaster? Was there ever a moment where you thought maybe this wouldn't be possible?
Yeah,
not possible, likely.
Yeah, I think there were some points there, especially when, conceptually looking at the offseason and looking at, okay, what would be the best case scenario? Would it be losing Dorian Finney-Smith and having access to the full mid-level exception, or would it be keeping Dorian Finney-Smith and then having access to the taxpayer mid-level? And weighing things out, I was going in saying the best result for the Lakers is keeping Dorian Finney-Smith, having the taxpayer, and then getting like a Clint Capella or something like that. Of course, at the
Yeah.
time, we had no idea that DeAndre Ayton was going to be available. And I think
No.
now, so when the DFS stuff was happening, there was a bit of where is this really going to go? Could this really, like you were saying, the relationship with Luka and Finney Smith, could that create problems? Could this all snowball for the Lakers? And then next thing you know, we're heading into a lot of uncertainty. I mean, if Luka isn't going to sign the extension, then you're talking about, do you trade him? Do you risk him getting to free agency? Would have been a mess. But I tried to remind myself that the Lakers have, over the last few years, they've gotten much more patient with what they've been doing. They've been almost frustratingly patient with stuff,
Mhm.
but it has paid off in some scenarios where we've seen them wait on stuff and then it's wound up working out. I mean, look, just last summer, right? I was losing my mind that they weren't doing anything, right? They drafted a couple of players and that was it. Those are the only moves they made. And then midseason, they found the Dorian Finney-Smith trade. And then, of course, the Luka trade. And so the patience did pay off. So I thought, maybe even though we're not hearing them connect, they were connected to Brooke Lopez a bit. And I wanted to hear, hey, Lakers are going to get all these guys and all this stuff's going to happen. I thought, you know what? Maybe there's still something coming here. Maybe the patience is going to pay off. And it certainly did. I mean, they were the benefactors of the buyout market with Ayton, the benefactors of the buyout market with Marcus Smart. They were able to get Jake LaRavia, and looking at it now, despite those fears a few weeks ago when the Finney Smith stuff first started popping up, I think they're in a better position than they were, or they
Yeah, they're
conceivably would
better.
have been had you told me back at the beginning of June, hey, Finney Smith's walking away and they're going to have the full MLE. So I hope that a lot of that was sort of planned out. You know what I mean? This wasn't just kind of stumbled through and they fell into the end zone with this team, and this is what the way it all went down. But it did seem like there was a real push to keep their optionality moving forward. And so far this summer, it's really paid off to the point where now you've checked most of your boxes and you still have your trade assets to make those other moves to kind of finish things off, whether that happens this summer or it happens during the season.
Yeah, if I was to pick nits, I would have traded one of Maxi or Gabe to be able to keep DFS and
Yeah.
still stay under the trade him to cap space somewhere. But
But I
we
wonder
know
what the
Rob
cost
doesn't do
was of
that.
doing that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
He doesn't operate like that. He wasn't willing to do that with Cam Reddish and Christian Wood last year. I
Sure.
don't think he would want to pay what he would have to pay to get off of those contracts this year. But yeah, I think overall the team is better. They're still flexible. Like you mentioned, though, or like you alluded to, whether it's now or closer to the deadline, I do think there are moves to be made. I would prefer the consolidation trade be made now
Yeah.
while there are still viable free agents out there. And then you can make your tweak trade, later in the year. Especially if your consolidation trade, like the one that everybody is kind of talking about, at least on my channel, has been one of or both of the Portland Trailblazers guys, where
Mhm.
Thibault or Williams. Though I keep on trying to tell people I'm already hearing that Williams is a little banged up. So that I don't know if the Lakers would be all that interested now.
It's so
Um,
frustrating.
yeah, but if it is just like if it would be Dalton and one of the expirings for Thibault, and you bring in less money and you open up the roster spot, you can also bring in one of those free agents as well. That would be the kind of like final move that I would like to see the Lakers make. And then Thibault's also expiring, so you could still move his expiring
Mhm.
and Maxi or Gabe, whoever is left over after this trade closer to the deadline. I've never thought that they were trading their 31 or 32 first rounder this summer, just knowing how Rob has operated in the past. What are your thoughts on the consolidation? Like, do you think this roster is fine as is, or do you think it still needs a couple more tweaks?
No, I definitely think it needs a few more tweaks. I don't think it's ready to roll as is, and we can get into why. But I guess my question is this, Anthony. If that consolidation trade was there, wouldn't they have done it a few days ago and just kept Jordan Goodwin? Like, I know they didn't want to lose Jordan Goodwin, so I don't know if that, and who knows, it takes one phone call to change these conversations.
Yeah.
But if that deal was there, wouldn't they have already done it?
I've been thinking about this. The way that I had it, or the way I've thought about it, is when Goodwin, when everybody knew the Lakers needed to make that deal to be able to keep Goodwin, and that was something that the league knew that the Lakers
Mhm.
needed to do or really, really wanted to do. I think prices got a little higher there, and it's possible that since then, with that amount of leverage gained, with Goodwin already gone, it's a bummer to see him gone, but
Yeah.
now without that impetus there, maybe you can have more realistic conversations potentially. But no, I think that's a fair and a good point, that had they intended to do it, they would have done it already. The problem too, Trevor, and I don't know if you're hearing some of the same stuff. I would imagine
Mhm.
so, but with the flattening of the lottery odds and with the flattening of the playoff odds, right? With more teams being able to make the play-in slash playoffs, um, a lot of these teams that would normally be sellers right now are holding on, right? So
Yeah.
Portland is the team that we were just talking about. They just extended Joe Cronin and they extended Chauncey Billups on the back of a good couple months at the end of the season. So they're probably thinking, and then after that, they traded a younger player in Anthony Simons for Drew Holiday, a win now player. So they're going for it. They
Yeah.
think that they can build off of that exciting March that they had last year. And they're one of several teams. I think Phoenix is kind of looking at this like, oh yeah, sure, we lost Bradley Beal and we lost Kevin Durant, but we still think that we can at least give it a go at the beginning part of the year. And I think part of this is that the Lakers and a lot of these more realistic playoff teams that are eventually going to be true buyers, they have to wait for the sellers to have reality smack them in the forehead.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and that's been one of the consequences of the play-in system. Is not only do you have the is it accomplished has it accomplished the goal of giving fans more of a reason to watch their team deeper into the season, right? There's no more, hey, we're already out of the race in December. It's, hey, we could sneak into the 10th seed. We're going to continue watching these games in February or in March or whatever. But it also means there are less sellers on the market. And so that's been an adjustment that teams have had to make. And I mean, you look at the West, realistically, what, 14 teams are going into the season planning on making the playoffs or
Yeah.
intending to make the playoffs anyway? I mean, maybe just Utah is probably the only team that is
I was
really
looking at the
not,
standings. I was like, man, it is
right?
literally just Utah. There are going to be
It
like 5 disappointed teams this year.
So, I mean, I guess that begs the question: if you're Portland, not only would you have to, from their perspective, plug their nose and do a trade with the Lakers, but maybe give up a better win now piece. I guess it depends on how they view Dalton Connect, but I do think from the Lakers side of things, that type of trade is absolutely needed. Whether it's Dalton Connect or somebody else that winds up being moved, you need to add more quality depth to this team because even though they've got 14 roster spots filled, you look at it and you say, well, but how many of these guys do you feel comfortable putting in a playoff game? And I still think that number is not high enough. And a player like Matisse Thybulle's been a guy I've talked about a lot this summer. Not saying he'd be a starter or something like that, but just having a guy who conceivably can do a little bit of something on the offensive end, at least be a threat to make an outside shot while giving you high level defense. Those are the kinds of guys you want on your team come playoff time. So if you can do something like that and open up a roster spot, so your final calculus is you're trading, let's say in your scenario, Dalton Connect and Maxi Kleba, and Maxi does look pretty jacked for what we've seen, the
I
pictures that have been
saw
going
that
around.
picture.
So who
I thought it was
knows?
AI.
Yeah, I thought it was Alex Caruso all over again, getting
Yeah.
the Photoshop treatment.
Yeah.
But Maxi Kleba and Dalton Connect for Thibault, the real calculus of it would be, you said Maxi Kleba, Dalton Connect for Thibault, and Amir Coffey, and Malcolm Brogdon, and
Yeah.
whoever else is out. Russell Westbrook is out there. God, I can't imagine them doing that. But that would be the final number there for the Lakers. And so I think that would be, I think, a really intriguing option if they do have a little bit more leverage now and they can get something like that done. It's been a great summer. The Luka extension is obviously the biggest key, but doing something like that would be like the icing on the cake, be the cherry on top, right?
Yeah.
And then you would say, okay, we can really go into this season with some optimism, and then still have the assets potentially to make another move midseason if once they get out on the floor you find out, oh, we thought this area was going to be a strength and instead it's a weakness, or vice versa. You could still have that flexibility moving forward if it's more of a minor trade like what you're advocating for.
If this is the roster, and I think it's likelier than not that
Yeah.
this is the roster. Um, if this is the roster, though, what are your expectations going into the season?
My expectations are that they would be one of the teams that are kind of in that middle group in the West. And it's a big group, but
Yeah.
you've got OKC, I think, at the top. They're in, their own tier, in my opinion. Some people
Mhm.
want to argue Denver's up there with them or whatever. But I've got OKC, I've got Denver and Houston, and then the Lakers in the midst of this kind of just mess of just about everybody else in the conference that's going to be competing for that playoff spot. What I would like to see them do is kind of separate and rise to the top of that group. And that would be my expectation for them going into the season. Now, some of the things that they believe will happen and some of the things they hope will happen come true, maybe they do find themselves in that upper tier. But I think right now, the floor for them should be competing for at least the fourth seed in the
Yeah.
Western Conference. I'm not saying they get it, but they should be in the mix of teams that are trying to get that fourth seed heading into the season, in my opinion, if we stay as is.
Yeah, I meant to ask this to Harrison, but I got kind of sidetracked as my kids popped on the show, and then he never answered his expectations. I gave mine. I would like to see the Lakers. Like I would say they have to win a playoff series this year. You have Luka
Yeah.
and LeBron still. And I would like to be at least, 50-50 in their next series after that. And then from there, you're probably looking at a puncher's chance type of deal against one of Denver or OKC. I do have Denver in that OKC tier,
Mhm.
seeing as they pushed OKC to 7 games with, I thought, a much worse roster last year. And then from there, if you can get past one of those two teams, ideally only face one of them somehow, some way. And then if you can get past those guys, then you're going into a final series against, in all likelihood, a much worse team. So, who knows? Um, I want to talk though about this team's identity as
Mhm.
currently constructed, and I think even if they make a couple of moves, it would be more on the fringes than it would be identity shifting. Um, I think the simplest answer is the identity is Luka, but
Yeah.
I actually kind of think that the way that they kind of envision themselves building a rotation around Luka goes just as far as he goes in setting that identity. Um, Given this group here, what kind of identity do you think you're hoping, or what kind of basketball are you watching, waiting to see, or hoping to see from this team this season?
I do think that forming an identity, which sometimes has been a little bit difficult to define over the last few years for the Lakers in terms of what we're seeing on the floor, what is it that they're trying to be? I think really they were three different teams over the course of last season. So even their
Yeah,
identity midseason shifted quite a bit. But number one is, of course, building it around Luka. But my understanding is they're focusing on younger players and mobility. And that's really what they're looking for. Players that have mobility, players that have athleticism, and then are in Luka's timeline, and then trying to let things kind of play out from there. So trying to get guys who have a bit of versatility, can play both sides of the ball, try to find those two-way players. They consider Marcus Smart, of course, to be one, and most people would, but Jake LaRavia has the potential to be a two-way player in this league as well. Trying to identify players like that, put them around Luka, and then let things happen. I think you do need to have real switchability on the defensive side of the ball. I think you need to try to make sure that you are, to some degree, mitigating any of the defensive concerns that you would have from Luka, as well as Austin Reeves. And that's essentially the type of player that you're trying to find: athleticism, switchability, versatility. Put as much of that around Luka. Let your coach mix and match where he can, and then go from there. Um, in terms of a theme, this is why I like the Marcus Smart edition so much, because Anthony, I keep going back to it. I can't get out of my head. I can't escape that 2019-2020 team came in with that attitude, that mentality.
Yep.
Day one of we're bigger than you, we're faster than you, we're stronger than you. We may not make as many threes, but we're going to kick your ass and we're going to defend like crazy and we're going to do all these things. And they knew who they were. I'd like to see a little bit more of that with this team. Luka is going to orchestrate the offense. Things will be good on that side of the ball. I'd like to see the defensive identity really set in. I think Marcus Smart can be a culture setter in that regard. So on the floor, talent-wise, versatility, youth, athleticism, switchability, all those things. Of course, shooting is important in that mix as well. From a team mentality, I want to see that defensive mindset really, because the
Yeah.
other parts will take care of themselves. So those are the things that I'm looking for from the Lakers identity here moving forward.
So I was listening to the LFR pod and they were having kind of a debate of Gabe versus Vando because I don't think there's enough minutes for both of those guys to play significant roles
Mm-hmm.
moving forward and or this season. And so like while we've been having our conversation, a few people in the chat have been saying offense first, score 120 points a game, just have overwhelming offense. And then they were saying that while you were making the point of punch teams in the mouth, get after it defensively,
Right.
get out in transition, stuff like that. And to me, if you think Gabe should be getting minutes, that's the offensive identity. He spaces the floor. He initiates the offense. He, if he could somehow float down to the corners more frequently, he becomes a legitimate threat from down there. If you want to go more towards the smash mouth, punch you in the face identity, there's Jared Vanderbilt, and I think he fits more into that identity. If you had to, and I'm not saying, I don't want to sound too much like ESPN, although this would be a hilarious ESPN segment.
Hang on. Let me turn up my volume.
Vincent.
I'm going to yell at you for a little while then if we're going to go ESPN style.
Yeah, but I could just imagine starting first take with Gabe Vincent or Jared Vanderbilt. We figure it out next. But yeah, that's kind of what I think this identity is going to come down to around Luka. Luka is the identity. That's the centerpiece. That's the cornerstone. That goes without saying. But depending on how you want the pieces to fit around him, I think we really are going to wind up watching them make a choice between those two guys. So if it was up to you, you would lean more towards Vanderbilt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Without, and that's easy decision on my part to lean towards Jared Vanderbilt. And that's look, when we're looking at this Lakers team, I've seen some people in chat say, but their offense wasn't that good last year. Projecting that they will be. I think ultimately a Luka-led offense will find its way. I was surprised it didn't get better than it was last season because they've got the pieces, the skill set to be good offensively. But I do understand that the Lakers look at Jared Vanderbilt and think he could be not the solution, but one of the solutions to their point of attack defense. I know they're very excited about the fact that he's healthy, that he's going to have a full off season to really train in a way that he hasn't been able to in the past. There's already footage going around of him working on his finishing at the rim. There's a little bit of, him shooting the corner three. I can't say it looks great right now, but he's working on it. He's getting better. And when you look at the numbers, you look at the percentage of time that he spent defending on the perimeter compared to in the paint, he's that kind of guy that I think can be a difference maker on that side of the ball. We've been saying it for years, and maybe I'm dumb to even be having this thought, but if he can get a little bit better with his finishing at the rim, a little bit better on the with his floor spacing, it would go a really long way.
A question that I had in my mind, I didn't want to ask it on Twitter because there's no way to make it sound like it's not. I'm not asking it for the sake of just pissing people off. But if Vanderbilt wasn't on the contract that he's on right now, would we still be having these conversations about it? Like about trying to work him into the rotation? Would we be trying to find ways to make it work with Vanderbilt?
I think so. Like if he was an expiring contract, say, we'd be talking about him more. We'd be talking about him right with Gabe, right with Maxey, in terms of could he be a trade asset, right? We'd be talking about him through that lens too. But I do think when we look at what this Lakers team really needs and what you lost in Dorian Finney-Smith was such an important defensive piece, even if he did, a lot of his defensive work was done in the paint and his rotations were, God, I'm going to miss those. They were beautiful. But Jared Vanderbilt, it's not just because of what he can do specifically defensively, it's because of the scarcity on the roster in terms of what he does. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of guys on the team that can replace that. And so because of that, I think that's if the Lakers had, 7, 8, 9 guys who are 6'8" with long limbs and versatile defensively and all of that, then it's a different conversation about Vando. But right now, they need what he can provide on the defensive side of the ball because they don't have a whole lot of other guys that can do it.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly with you. Part of the reason that I think I'm mostly with you is because Gabe's shooting is just so streaky, right? If he was
Sure.
more, because there are multiple ways to get to a 37 percent from 3-point range type shooter, right? You could just be that all the time, and more often than not, like you're looking at a variance of 2 of 5 versus 1 of 5 versus 0 of 2. But like
Right.
instead with Gabe, it's like he'll make 6 one game and then he won't make another one for a couple of weeks, and maybe not that extreme, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If Gabe was more the former type shooter, where it was a little bit more predictable, and whenever he stepped on the court, he was like when you watch how defenses react when Dalton is open in summer league, and it's like hair on fire. We got to get out to that guy. We're flying out to close out to him. If Gabe was closer to that type of 30 whatever percent shooter he was, then I would say, yeah, I would probably lean towards Gabe, but he's not. And I think that between Austin, between Luka, between LeBron, and also I think importantly between those guys and the combination of those guys and DeAndre Ayton, I think there's enough offense there so that Vando doesn't gum it up too bad, and I think
Right.
there are ways to involve him. And actually, one of the things that I would actually give Darvin some credit for was I actually thought he was finding some interesting ways of involving Vando in the offense before he got hurt again. I would try to find some of that film and try to figure out a way to, whether it's getting him in motion, whether you
Mhm.
just have him. I remember watching Lonzo Ball when he was on the Lakers still, and I used to call him a Roomba because if he didn't have the ball, he would just kind of wander around and set screens and just gum up
Right.
the defense. And if you could try to basically turn Vando into a Roomba and just have him just, same kind of idea of what he does defensively, where he's either really bothering the other team's best player or he's wreaking havoc on the weak side. If you could have him try to find a way to do that offensively too, and mitigate some of the offensive issues that he presents, now you're really cooking with I prefer lard to nobody's surprise. But like that's when you're really, you're looking at a really good combination there with Vando.
Right, and you look at the Lakers, we're talking about Gabe Vincent scoring the basketball, and he can do that in spurts, but like you said, he's very streaky, not even in necessarily the same way as like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was streaky, but Gabe kinda has that sort of feast or famine
Hmm.
to him, but one of the Lakers' problems for last season was bench scoring. They simply didn't have enough of it. So, do you hope that Gabe will get going and provide more bench scoring, or do you kind of go the other way and lean into, well, we're not going to score a bunch, so let's make sure our defense is really, in terms of our bench group anyway, let's make sure our defense is really solid. And I tend to go with the former there because I do think that, like, if what I'm looking for most in my conceptual backcourt here with Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic, what do I most need? I need somebody who can get stops. I need somebody who can do all the other stuff because Reeves and Luka, I'm going to trust them to do enough of the scoring, the floor spacing, all of that. And if I have to defend a high level two, which is something they were sometimes asking Gabe Vincent to do. He was chasing ones as well. But I think I trust Jared Vanderbilt to do that a little bit more than I do Gabe, despite the fact that Vando is 6'9" and he's more wing sized or even big sized. He's the preferred option, I think, to defend some of
Yeah.
the higher scoring, even if it is a 2 out there. And so that's why I would lean towards him. But I do think Gabe will have a role. I do wonder though how much the arrival of Marcus Smart, does that diminish the role of Gabe Vincent as well? And then do we get to a point where, and I guess I'll ask you this, do we get to a point where, because the Lakers right now, we look at the true bigs on the roster, it's Jackson Hayes is your backup, of course, Ayton is your starter, and then Maxey. If you have the option, say, in this hypothetical consolidation trade that we're talking about, to include Gabe or Maxey, based on team need and the arrival of Smart, do you lean towards putting in Gabe in the deal so that you've got 3 centers on the team with somewhat differing skill sets? Or do you still lean Maxey based on what Gabe contributed last year? I think that'll be a fascinating thing to watch too.
I think it's twofold. I would take it a step further and say
Yeah.
teams probably more interested in Gabe. So you probably get a little bit more return if you throw Gabe in there than Maxey because he at least played last year. Yeah, I would, I wouldn't blink at one or the other. I would basically go to a team and say, which one do you want? And whichever one gets this deal done, depending on the deal, I would include those guys. I don't see much difference there, but yeah, I've been thinking about that too. Because Smart has played point guard in the way that he does for most of his life, really. He's 6'3". It's not like he was, and he can't shoot, so it's not like he was much of a shooting guard ever. So I do kind of wonder if the whole point of having Gabe out there is just to get the ball across half court and initiate the offense, or get the ball to, I would imagine Gabe won't share the court too much with Luka. So if the point is to get the ball to LeBron or to Austin in, with an initiated offense, that's something that Smart could technically do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're just looking at, because I actually think Vando is a lot better at guarding guards than he is playing physically against guys. And if he's going to be doing that anyway, then yeah, it is it. And then also, if you're somehow able to keep Maxey, I don't have too high hopes for Maxey.
No.
He's just been hurt so much over the course of his career, and especially lately. But you at least, if you trade Gabe instead of Maxey going into the season, you at least get the opportunity to see if Maxey can be that floor spacing big, or if you have to go out and get one instead. Because that is kind of the place where if the Lakers were to make a tweak between now and the end of the summer, I'm kind of torn between getting another wing out there, specifically one with a little bit more foot speed, or getting a big who's better than Jackson behind Ayton. Which way do you lean there?
I lean towards the wing. I think I lean towards the wing. I know Ayton, the Lakers are excited about him. They think they're going to get the Chris Paul version of Ayton, the Suns version of Ayton. They think Luka's going to unlock that. I think he eats the lion's share.
Baby.
What's that?
Contract year Ayton.
That's right. That's right. Contract year Ayton, revenge body Ayton. We're definitely getting revenge body Luka, I think. So I lean towards the wing. I think that's where you need the most defensive help. Now, in terms of could you get a different big behind Jackson Hayes, I'm not down on Jackson Hayes. I think that, like we saw in the playoffs where he wasn't used, right? He wasn't used much. We could argue whether or not he should have been used more. I think he certainly has his shortcomings as a player, but we also had a stretch where he was really, really good with Luka, to where we were legitimately asking the question, is Jackson Hayes just the guy? Is this the fit that they were
looking to get paid? Yeah.
Right. And so obviously that didn't wind up coming to fruition. It didn't wind up following through the postseason. And so Hayes wound up on a small contract again, and now he's the backup. But I'm okay with him being my backup big. Would it be ideal to have another player in there? Yes, but I think the urgency to add more perimeter defense is greater than the urgency to add another big and try to bump, Jackson Hayes out of that spot. And I also think we need to remember too that while Luka and Ayton share an agent, so does Jackson Hayes. And so that's also something that's gonna matter in this conversation. I do think that Hayes can be a solid backup for the Lakers. I think there is potential to unlock some of that great stretch that we saw from him, at least in 10 to 15 minute a night role. And so I'm not too worried about him being the backup big. I'd focus more on the wing.
Yeah, I'm with you mostly. The one concern I do have with Jackson is he got dinged up a couple of times last year,
True.
and because of the way that he plays, right? He's like incapable of just jumping to yay high. He always kind of like JaVale, right? JaVale was just
Mhm.
like if he was going to jump, he was going to jump, and he was way up there. Hayes is kind of are wired the same way, and I think that gets him out of position, and it makes his ankles a little bit more susceptible and stuff. And he's a wiry guy anyway, so it might be nice to get a big just in case Hayes gets hurt. I saw somebody ask about Day'Ron Sharp in the comments, and I've been pushing for Day'Ron Sharp dating back to last year. I would love it, especially now that he's extended. He signed the same contract basically as Laravia, right? So
Mhm.
maybe a year less or so.
Except that he got a team option, second year team option
Even better.
for Day'Ron, right? Yeah, he's a guy that I've been talking about for a while too. Would have been a nice fit. There were so many times when they were getting crushed on the boards, and you were like, "Man, Day'Ron would help with that because he's an elite rebounder. The rest of
Mhm.
his game is still coming along, but he's an elite rebounder, and so I think he would have been an intriguing target for the Lakers. But ultimately, they didn't wind up going that route. But yeah, I like Day'Ron Sharp a lot, and yeah, was hoping when the Nets decided to rescind that qualifying offer that maybe the Lakers would swoop in there, but didn't wind up going that way.
He also fits in that smash mouth, just beat
Yes.
people up mentality. And
Mhm.
yeah, that would have been nice. But all right, let's really quickly dive into some of these super comments.
Yeah.
We have a few of them now, so we do have to play the most important clip on the show. All right, first comment here comes from Cisco Lee, who asks, "What do you think about DK and Maxi plus a second round pick for Kelly Oubre and Andre Drummond, a bruiser backup center and athletic depth at wing? Oubre looked a little stiff last year,
Yeah.
little washed, so that makes me a little nervous. I wouldn't want to give up a second round pick for Oubre and Drummond personally. I think you're giving away the better asset there in Connect uh than either of the guys that you're sitting back. But any thoughts on have you ever thought of Kelly Oubre and Andre Drummond over the course of the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought of
I have
them
not.
in terms of a former Laker and Andre Drummond, and why did they let him go, and when they did, and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily fits. You can always use another center in the NBA. Chicago was crazy for not trading him when they could have, and now he's with Philly. But I don't know if I'm really, and maybe it's just I'm more defensive focused in general. But if I'm gonna go and I'm gonna give up Dalton Connect, if I'm gonna give up, they only have 1 second round pick to trade. If I'm gonna give that up, I want to get a wing who can really defend, and that's not really Kelly Oubre. And then Andre Drummond, he's a big body. Is he a long term answer at center? Not really. So is he really that piece that you're going to add for the conceivable future alongside Luka? No. So it's not so much that I hate the value; it's that I think those pieces could be better served targeting different players that are going to be better fits eventually.
Yeah, I mean, you can only trade Dalton and Maxi once. You
Yeah.
can only trade that second round pick once. So if you're like I just think by the time we get to the season, like there's a world where Embiid is still hurt, Paul George is still hurt. He's already dinged up, right? Paul George is already hurt.
Mhm.
If Philly stinks again, you might be able to get those guys in the buyout market. Those guys you might not have to give up anything to get those guys.
Sure.
So yeah, I wouldn't give up anything for those guys specifically. But look, it kind of reminds me of what was it before? Was it like Taylor Horton Tucker and Kendrick Nunn in a first round pick was the trade package that the Lakers were calling
Yep.
everybody with?
Yep.
And it like that's essentially what the trade package is going to be from here on through I would say the end of the summer, at least while
Mhm.
there are free agents available. I do kind of what do you think of the notion of holding on to Dalton, seeing as you would be trading him at probably lowest potential value right now?
Yeah.
Is it worth holding on to him just for the hope that maybe, just maybe, he looks like he likes playing basketball again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to that where you can say if the deal's not right, if it's not worth it to move on from Dalton, there's nothing that says that what we saw from Dalton. By the way, he was awful in summer league. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
really bad.
surprising how bad he was in summer league. But there's nothing that says that that's what he is forever, and that's what we tend to do, right? Oh my God, they have to trade this guy. Look how bad he was in summer league. Look, people were saying that about Max Christie 3 games into the season last year.
Yeah,
He took a
he got
little
benched.
sabbatical. He took a little journey to the bench for a couple of weeks, and then he came back, and then he rounded into a much better player. Sometimes growth is not just a straight line. We're looking at basketball players, and I'm not saying for sure that's what's going on with Dalton, but I think it's a mistake to look at what happens in summer league and just project that moving forward, and that's what he's forever going to be. So if you're the Lakers and you're looking at a value prospect here, Dalton Connect is, if you're selling him based on what he was in summer league, you are probably selling low on him. There's a chance you're not. There's a chance that's just what he continues to do moving forward. But I tend to look at the big games we saw from him last season and think that can't have just disappeared from him. So I do think there's going to be opportunity for his value to improve here moving forward. And I wouldn't be giving him up just to trade him, just to say that you moved him, unless you really fully believe that what we saw in summer league is simply what he is and what he will be from here on out, which I find unlikely. But if you do believe that, then yes, you trade him right now and get whatever you can and get out.
Agree. Next one here comes from Logan Shook. Can we get Aaron Nesmith by the trade deadline? What would Indiana want back? Would the outgoing assets going out leave us with enough to contend? Indiana is impossible to figure because
Right.
what are they doing this year? But also it's not like they're never going to be good ever again, because eventually Hallie is going to be back.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think they would want Nesmith there for whenever Hallie comes back. So that's kind of the complicating factor there. But if you're going to try to get him, it would take everything that isn't already, strapped down. I would say it would take the first round pick. It would take whatever. It would take Dalton. It might even take the arrow, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he's that exciting of a like up and coming role. Like I think he had his ascension a little bit last playoffs, right? With that game against the Knicks, where he almost single handedly brought Indiana back into that game. But I think he's about to take another, or he was about to. I don't know if he will with Halliburton out, but I think he's about to be kind of like that OG Anunoby class of 3-and-D wing that are going to get paid, and it's going to take multiple first round picks eventually to try to get that guy away from there.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you're saying there. He's 26 years old, on the rise, only making $11 million. Like, getting him would be very difficult, I think, for the Lakers or for anybody. Indiana, yeah, they don't want Tyrese Halliburton coming back next year. And same thing with the Celtics with Tatum. They don't want these guys coming back and looking around and going, where'd everybody go?
Right.
What happened?
They already lost Turner,
and your whole team's gone. So they'd be demanding, I would think, a high price for him would be pretty tough. And I don't know, is there any ill will that still exists from Indiana from the Paul George situation years ago? Like, how does Indy feel about trading with the Lakers? Is that still a thing? I don't know. Maybe something.
I don't
there.
think that I don't get the sense that they like the Lakers too much. Remember
Yeah.
they tried to tattle on the Lakers for tampering too,
Yeah.
right? Like it was just I don't think that there's too much love lost. At least I don't think I think it's that do you ever watch Mad Men? You watch Mad Men?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well it's the scene where the one guy gets into the elevator, the main character gets into the
Oh,
elevator, and
yes.
the
Yeah.
other guy goes
John
like,
Hamm. Yeah.
how do you live with yourself? He's like, I don't even think
I don't
about
think
you
about
ever.
you.
Yeah. All right. Vinny Jaj writes, any chance to get Wiggins, even though Miami said no, or any player we can get who can play the 3 and have Rui come off of the bench? I mean, if you're going to get Wiggins, it would cost Rui, it would cost Dalton, and it would cost, I don't think I wouldn't give up a first round pick
No.
for Wiggins, but I would part with Rui for him, especially seeing as like, we haven't heard a peep about extension talks between the Lakers and Rui. So if the idea is eventually to lose him to free agency anyway, or the potential that you might lose him to free agency anyway. I think I'd rather, like, worst case scenario, you have a $30 million expiring contract next year in Wiggins on a guy who is still really good defensively. So that's me. I wouldn't give up a first for him, but I know there's a lot of debate as far as Rui for him, and I think that's pretty easy for me. Where do you stand?
Yeah, I think there's similar levels of players in Rui and Wiggins. Obviously, Wiggins has had the bigger stage experience,
Yeah,
but Wiggins' skill set, I believe, would be a better fit right now
yeah,
than Rui's. And so I would make that swap if I could. I would not give up a first round pick to do it, not just because of the value that future first round pick could hold, the opportunity cost, and all of that, but also Wiggins does have that extra year and $30 million sitting on their books,
yep,
which can absolutely matter. For example, like if you are taking money off of Miami's books, you have to factor in, guess what they're going to do next summer? They're going to be calling Austin Reeves, right? Like
yeah,
that. If you're taking on that extra
or
$30 million
Giannis,
in
right?
salary,
Like,
there's value to that coming off of Miami's books too. And I think that has to be accounted for. If Miami wants the world for Andrew Wiggins right now, that they're well within the right to do it. But that doesn't mean the Lakers should pay that price. I like him just fine. But if he told me you could swap, even if he told me it was Rui and Dalton, I think I could be talked into it. But adding in the first, it's too much when we add the financial piece to it as well.
and we know what the Lakers have their first round picks lined up for very soon, right? Like I've always thought that the whole keeping your cap sheet clean angle of it has kind of frustrated me. I kind of disagree with that outlook, but you do want to have as many first round picks in your back pocket just in case, that those players do become available and you do have to send, 4 picks or however many first round picks to team X for Giannis, for Jokic, for whomever.
Yeah, I mean, we look and you can look back and say, well, they should have done the Miles Turner trade, right? Back when they could have the Russell Westbrook and 2 firsts for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield trade with the Pacers. They should have done that back then. Instead of they waited into the season, then they got D'Lo and Beasley and Vando. But what's interesting is that pick that the extra pick they didn't give up was used to get Luka Doncic, right? I mean, now obviously
Yeah.
that's about as outlier of a trade as you can get,
Yeah.
but there is something to be said for having the flexibility into the future to make moves that may surprisingly come available, because one of the things we love about this league is you just never know what the hell's going to happen. I mean, Miles Turner is a Milwaukee Buck right now. Luka is a Laker. You never know what's going to happen, and you want to be able to pounce on those opportunities that can sometimes come from out of nowhere.
And specifically talking about this Lakers team that seems to wind up with that caliber of player through those weird circumstances all the time. All right, last one here from Dario Valenzuela writing, hello, guys. How serious are Dixon and Baisley injuries? I was hoping both would make the team. Thanks, guys. Baisley's injury looked bad.
It looked bad.
We never saw Dixon's injury. He just showed up to Vegas in a walking boot. So I don't know what specifically happened there. The fact that we haven't heard anything at all as far as him potentially getting a two-way spot or anything like that would indicate to me that it's at least that bad of an injury.
I've heard it's unlikely that he's getting the 2-way spot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've there's some momentum behind Stewart, I guess, but I haven't heard much. It was funny. Shams reported that Magnon was getting one. I haven't seen them officially announce him since.
No, they haven't.
Even though they've announced Coloco. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there. But yeah, I don't think Dixon is getting the deal, and then Baisley, I think he's out for the year. That injury looked bad.
Yeah,
Really hope I'm wrong, but that looked bad.
I haven't heard any confirmation one way or another about what it is or anything like that, but it looked, yeah, I mean, no contact. God, and he was having such a great summer. He was really, I mean, people were really starting to turn heads and pay attention to him and what he was doing out there. But I hope I'm wrong, but I would be surprised if he's playing basketball anytime soon.
Yeah. It's such a brutal career for him, Like, he is a very interesting player, and he was a very interesting player when he was in OKC, and he was a really, really interesting player when he was in Denver, and then he hurt his knee in Denver, wound up having to go to I think China, right? I think is where he was playing, and then he has another really interesting summer, and then the way that played out, I really feel terrible for him. as a human being, that really sucks to watch. All right. Well, I have taken up too much of your time, Trevor. Thank you very much for hopping on. This has been an absolute blast. Obviously, this, if you guys are listening to this, I know that you follow Trevor's work and the work that they do at LakersNation. You do great work. Anything specifically that you want to plug? You also have Basketball Bulletin.
Yeah.
The work that you do with Keith. Tell people where to find you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on your show here. Yeah, you guys can find me over at LakersNation. You can find the NBA front office show. We are on a little bit of a break right now while Keith is taking a little mini vacation, finally getting away. It's much deserved, of course. But we also we have the NBA front office show, and then the Basketball Bulletin, where we're doing updates from around the NBA every day that you guys can find over on YouTube. So, but again, Anthony, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you whenever I talk to you.